friend Shank here at the bar. What do you want me to do with him?
Finish him.
Got it. Get him!
It's bloody, it's brutal, and it's surprisingly beautiful. It's Shank for the Xbox 360's Live Arcade, and if you're a fan of the sleazy and sordid exploits of old Grindhouse cinema, you'll probably be a fan of Shank. Shank is a side-scrolling celebration of Grindhouse exploitation, and like the tasteless films from which it draws so much inspiration, the game emphasizes lurid themes and graphic violence. But one of the most interesting things about Shank is where it deviates from those Grindhouse traits. True exploitation films never concerned themselves with artistic quality. The medium was always subservient to the shock value. But Shank breaks from that paradigm in one very obvious way. This game is absolutely gorgeous.
Gotta wait.
Shank is back.
And I don't mean that in a technical sense. The game is definitely impressive from that perspective as well, but more importantly, Shank is one of the most artistically well-designed games I've played in a long time. Every frame, every animation just bleeds, if you'll pardon the pun, with the utmost care and attention. Of course, considering that this game was designed and animated not by game developers, but by veteran artists and animators, it should come as no surprise that Shank animates more like a modern cartoon than a downloadable video game. In a way, Shank breaks new Grindhouse ground. Cartoonsploitation. Of course, Shank is also a video game. More specifically, it's a side-scrolling beat-em-up in the most classic sense. Shank borrows from the genre's earliest games, such as Ninja Gaiden, while also implementing a combo-driven combat system very reminiscent of modern games like Devil May Cry. The result is a game that applies a modern twist to an old formula, but without sacrificing those traditional sensibilities. Shank is very much as difficult as it is beautiful, but the combat is also surprisingly deep. There are countless ways to build combos, and although the combat itself doesn't change as the game progresses, Shank's evolving arsenal definitely keeps the killing interesting. Of course, Shank isn't without its flaws. As with many games of this nature, combat does become a bit repetitive after a while, especially considering that it doesn't really evolve across the game's 3 or 4 hours. Which is a problem itself. This is a very short game, and the difficulty also takes a few uneven spikes. So if you're not dissuaded by Shank's utter irreverence, keep in mind you'll definitely be at risk for some frustration and potential controller throwing. But you know, I almost welcome that. I mean, these days we're sort of conditioned to think any game that frustrates us is inherently flawed. And although Shank is certainly frustrating at times for both difficulty and some questionable game design, it also reminds me of those bygone days when video games were supposed to be hard, when they were supposed to make you want to pull your hair out, and to feel that again is actually a refreshing change of pace. Shank is far from perfect, but it follows in the bloody footsteps of movies that were never meant to be. It's a short and often infuriating visceral thrill, a game that's flaws can't manage to slash the throat of its fun. Indeed, if you're at all interested in what a Robert Rodriguez-directed episode of Samurai Jack would be like, Shank is your ridiculously violent answer.